Welcome to Real Estate Investing for Women. On this show, you will learn how to create wealth through real estate the blissful way. That means with very little stress and very little time. We talk about strategies, mindset, heart set, money smarts, resources, and so much more to ensure you're able to create the success you most deeply desire. Now, here's your host, Moneeka Sawyer.
Ladies, today I am so excited to welcome to the show David Vernich.
Hi.
Hi. As a 37 plus year career as a banker, David has loaned money to all kinds of businesses, but one stands head and shoulders above all the rest to generate passive income: real estate investing. So 15 years ago, David sought out a mentor to teach him how to invest in real estate and found that the perfect husband and wife team to show him the ropes. After doing one single family flip and coming to the realization that finding and fixing up houses was not something he enjoyed, David pivoted to a team approach, and using his financing expertise, he became the guy to fund the purchases and renovations for starter homes, to build passive income for the whole team and share in the many benefits of owning 1 to 4 family rental properties. Wow, I did not do good with that, but I hope everybody got that.
That's a mouthful, isn't it?
It is. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
How
Yeah, it's
are you?
15 years condensed down into about a paragraph. So
Dave, I love that though. You did a great job. So many times I get these bios that are like a whole page long, and I'm like, okay, what is it in here but anyway, so thank you for that. So, okay, so you started as a banker. I can relate to that. So did I. I was a business loan officer.
nice.
Yeah, but you moved into real estate investing. Give me a little bit more clarity. As a business loan officer, I never did business loans for real estate. So talk to me a little bit about how that transition happened for you.
Sure. Well, I didn't get into banking because I wanted to be a banker. I actually got into banking for 2 reasons. One, my wife worked for a bank and didn't like working at the bank and thought I would fit in. And number 2, I hated my current job. So
I'm
the
not sure how
combination,
that goes.
if you hate your job, you're open to other opportunities, right? And if your
Right.
wife says this might be a good job for you, you kind of listen to her. So that's how I backdoored my way into banking. And essentially, I thought I do want to own and operate my own business one day. So I would think being a banker is probably a good position to be in. It'll introduce you to all these small business owners, and you get to talk to them and get to know them as friends. They'll tell you the good, the bad, the ugly, and they did. And that's why I stayed a banker. Because it looked like it was going to be extremely difficult to do what they did. And they were always frustrated with, making payroll and having multiple employees and government regulations. So I thought I'll just stay being a banker. Well, that was fine until I hit the age of 45. And at that time I'm still married to the same wife, but she wasn't working at the time. We had 4 sons at home. And I was making about $80,000 a year when I was 45 back in 2007. And I always looked at like football. It's a football analogy, which you may or may not like, but everybody knows about halftime. Halftime is half the game is over and people make halftime adjustments. Are you ahead? Are you behind? What are you going to do for the next half? Well, 20 years into your career, when you're 20, you start at 25, you get to 45, you're going to retire hopefully at 65. You want to take a look at where you are, what your score is. So I pulled up all my numbers as a banker, filled everything out, and realized, wow, I'm behind. In fact, I'm so far behind. If I don't do something differently, then I'm going to have to live in a van down by the river like Chris Farley did on Saturday Night Live and eat government subsidized cheese. Now, it wasn't going to be that bad because I was saving. I mean, I saved every year from the very first job I had at age 22, started my 401k, never stopped saving. But the pile of money that had accumulated in 20 years was nowhere near enough to generate anything close to maintaining my standard of living. So I knew I had to make a change. And so that's what motivated me more than anything else to find something that would fill the gap. And when I looked at my loan portfolio, the only people I would trade places with were the people that I had lent money to in the past that were real estate investors.
Interesting. And so that's how you got turned on to real estate.
Well, I avoided real estate for so long because my problem is I don't have two thumbs as far as being able to do any kind of work whatsoever. If you gave me a hammer, I may not even know which end to use. But assuming I figure out which end to use, the end result is going to be a total disaster. And I'm not kidding. I'm terrible at anything about fixing anything. In fact, I joke with my wife, my favorite tool in the tool belt is the checkbook, because I'd rather pay somebody to do it than do it myself.
Oh, David, I am so with you. My husband is actually fairly handy. So like a lot of the little stuff he'll do, but I am all about the pen and the checkbook. That's my favorite tool. I say mine is my favorite tool is the pen,
Yes.
right? Write a note and I write a check. There we are.
Pay the professionals. They do it once, and then you get to enjoy whatever you want to do with your time.
Exactly. So talk to me about what happened next. What have the results been? I know you started kind of with zero, right?
Yes. I started less than zero because typically one of the biggest holdbacks for people into real estate is, well, I don't have the money.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have enough money to buy a house. I need to have 20% down or 25% down, or I'm afraid of debt. So I want to have 100% down. And so they just look at their checking account and say, a house costs 100,000. I don't have 100,000. Close the checkbook. We're done. Mm-hmm. But I was a banker, obviously. So I said to myself, I don't have $100,000. And that was my goal. I wanted to buy a house and fix it up for 100,000. Now, remember, this is 2007. So this is 15 years ago.
In which market?
Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay.
So I looked at my checkbook. I didn't have $100,000, but here's what I did have. I had a W-2 job as a banker. So I made $80,000 a year. I had clean credit. So I had a good credit score. And my secret weapon, I knew the easiest bankers in the city. So I know which ones had lending authority of $100,000 that knew me, that liked me, that would trust that I would pay it back. So I called this individual and I said, hey, I'd like to borrow $100,000 unsecured. And he said, what are you using the money for? I said, I'm going to buy a house, fix it up, and put a renter in there or sell it. And he said, so you're working at another bank now, right? I said, yes. How much you make? I told him. And he said, okay, check box 1, you got a job with an income. Check box 2, yes, I got good credit. And then number 3, if you don't sell the house, I'm going to have to take it as collateral and put a mortgage on it. And I said, no problem. He said, come on up, I'll give you $100,000. So that was how I got into real estate. I borrowed the entire amount from another banker. Mm-hmm. And so I had that in my back pocket because I wanted that first. And then the next thing I had to do was find somebody who would show me how to do this.
Yes.
So step 1 was have the money or know where you're going to get the money. Step 2 was who's going to show you how to do something that you've never done before. So I started thinking about people that I'd lent money to from other banks because I'd been through, in this point in my career, 7 bank mergers that have been bought out. So I'd leave at a bank, go to another bank, and start fresh with another bank. Some banks liked real estate loans, some didn't. So I would lose track of some of these folks, but I did remember them because I helped allow them get started. So I called this one individual and I said, hey, let's go to lunch. I want to ask you a question. And when I took him to lunch, I said, can you teach me how to flip a house? And he looked at me and said, no. And I'm like, what? I mean, I would have bet money because I helped this guy get started. Mm-hmm. And he goes, no, I get up at 3 a.m. and I'm in my pajamas and I'm doing stuff I can't show people how to do this, but you don't need me. You need these people because these people actually have a formal class and they used to be one of your customers too, Dave. So wake up and smell the coffee. So I'm like, okay, lunch number 2. I went to lunch number 2 and they said, yes, we will teach you how to flip a house. So what we do is we actually have a class. It's in our house. It was a husband and wife. And we've been doing this for 14 years. We have 144 houses. We have a full-time property manager on staff. We have a full-time repair and maintenance guy on staff. So you come into our house, we'll take 6 Saturdays, we'll go through all the lessons, and then your final exam is to do your project house, which we'll help you with. But guess what? You're responsible for coming up with all the money because that's what real estate's about. So I said, sign me up. And I went to the house for 6 classes in a row. I had the money lined up. We fixed the house up before we even finished it. Somebody said, I'd like to rent this house. And quick story on that, that person moved in, has been the same tenant ever since in that house.
Good job.
14 and a half years, not one
Yeah.
term. So after we finished, I said to them, time out. I've done everything you said. Now let me tell you, the whole time I was doing it, I was biting my tongue because I either wouldn't or couldn't or didn't want to do 95% of what you were teaching me, but I did it. I didn't complain. And they said, well, why in the world would you do this? Why would you spend this money and all this time if you're not going to do what we taught you? I said, because I needed to know what value I brought to the chain, because if I can't bring value, I can't be a part of real estate investing. So what they said was, well, how do you want to work this? And I said, well, here's what I propose. I don't ever want to flip another house. I never want to find another house. I don't want to manage the house. Well, what do you want to do? Nothing. I said, no, I will bring you unlimited amounts of capital. So you don't have to put any money in the house. You just do all the work because you guys are pros. You've got a system already. I just want to plug into your system. And what I bring is unlimited capital. Of course, they looked at me and said, we see you're driving a Toyota Corolla, Dave. You're not rich. And I said, you're right. I'm done. I borrowed $100,000 for this first house. However, I know people, and I know people who are doctors and dentists and business owners who have plenty of money, but no time or desire to learn how to do what you do. They don't even have the time to take the class with you that I took. So if I bring these people in and you do the work, and then I get a piece of each property, then we can build a very successful team. And we can do way more houses as a team than we could do individually. And so that's what we've been doing for the last 15 years.
That is an awesome story.
Isn't it?
It is.
It's just, and it wasn't something I planned from the beginning to put this together, but I had to figure out if I don't bring value to this equation, I can't do real estate. And I knew I didn't want to do the hard parts, which I can't do, but I did know there were people out there that were very good at it. And so if I could take something off their plate that they didn't want to do, i.e. talk to bankers or investors and get their money, like that was a walk in the park for me, then I could just say, as long as you can continually perform and get base hits on every house so that we don't lose money, I can find you unlimited amounts of money.
And have they?
They have. And right today, with all the partnerships I've been involved with doing the same thing over the past, it'll be 15 years in December, we have 119 properties.
Okay. And this same team is the one that does the actual legwork for it. Is that true?
So they were my original team. They're still partners with me on the majority of my houses in Nashville. But as you probably have heard in the news, Nashville is a hot real estate market. Yeah. And so the numbers stopped working for new purchases. My first purchase in Nashville was $70,000 for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, 1,400 square feet. That house right now is worth $325,000. Oh, wow. So it doesn't work in Nashville. So I had to find another group of people to do the same thing in another city. So I moved 42 miles northwest of Nashville in Clarksville, Tennessee, which is home to the 101st Airborne Army post. Did it with an investor lady up there who was extremely good at it. Did the exact same pitch to them. And then I did it with another group that I found in Memphis, Tennessee. And then I just recently branched into Little Rock, Arkansas. So essentially, I can find teams in different cities that are good at what they do. And then I bring the capital like I did in Nashville originally. And these are cash flowing markets.
Yeah. How are you picking the markets?
Basically, the numbers have to work so one of the things that I feel strongly about is I kind of have two mandates with what I'm doing. It has to be profitable, obviously, or it won't continue. That's kind of a given. But I think there's two major crises that are brewing that will never be fixed in our lifetimes. The first one is the retirement income crisis. And the issue with the retirement income crisis is people like myself, when I looked at my 401k statement at age 45, are not able to save enough money through a middle-class job to just replace their current standard of living. Okay. I'm not talking about having the lifestyles rich and famous and lighting cigars with $100 bills on your yacht. I'm talking about I want to maintain the same living standards that I have right now. So there's that. I read a report today that over 50% of Americans that are retiring with into virtual poverty with around $40,000 a year in income. And most of that's from Social Security. So they're having to scrape and cut expenses. The second thing that we all probably are familiar with is there's an affordable housing crisis. And builders cannot build anything that even approaches affordable housing for most individuals. Now, when I say affordable, I kind of say it with in quotes, because there is no such thing as affordable housing if you don't have an income.
That's true.
So you have to have a base of income. And that's why I named my book Middle Class to Millionaire. But even the middle class are feeling squeezed in housing right now. And so what we tend to focus on is finding 20 or 30-year-old houses that you wouldn't want to move into because they're not that good looking, but putting the money in them to fix them so that they are livable and rentable. But because we're buying an older house and fixing it up, we're not tied to new construction costs. We are now trying to build a brand new starter home in Nashville with a lot already paid for because we owned it. And it's probably going to cost $225,000 for a starter home. And you add the lot, that's $325,000. That's the bare bones, nothing fancy starter home. And so that's where we are in this country for a lot of the people.
Got it. And so you're picking markets where you can go in, the numbers will make sense, and you can get older homes that you feel you can fix up and still make a profit.
Right.
Okay. What kind of returns are you looking for cash flow wise?
So cash flow wise, we shoot for between, after all expenses, roughly $200 to $250 per month after all expenses. So that's why I say these aren't home runs, and you're not going to retire in one. When I originally got started, I thought to myself, this was my plan before I had the plan I have now. Mm-hmm. My original plan was, well, let's say I can hold my nose and stumble through this and have 10 houses. Okay. I'm going to get one house a year for 10 years. I'm 45 now. I'm going to put a 20-year loan on the first house. When I turn 65, that house is going to be paid for. Mm-hmm. Every year after that, the house will be paid for. If all my houses are paid for, and I am bringing in $1,000 after all expenses, taxes, insurance, repairs, and maintenance, that's $120,000 in retirement income. So that was my original goal. When I decided I really hate this as much as I thought I would,
yeah,
and I need to find the mentors. Well, the original deal I had with my mentors who did all the work was, I'm going to get 25% of each house. So that meant for me to do the same amount of houses, I had to do 4 for every one. But instead of me doing the whole house, hating it, having blood, sweat, and tears, mostly tears in every single house, they would call me and say, hey, Dave, we found a house. We need $80,000 to buy it. We need $20,000 to fix it up. And they would say, go get the money. And then I would make a few phone calls, a few emails. In 15 minutes, I'd have the money. And then I was done. And I was like, I'm going to get paid on this house for as long as we own it. And I'm going to get my portion of the cash flow for years. And it only took me 15 minutes. That's why I decided, well, I can keep my day job.
No kidding.
I don't have to quit it, And so it was kind of like all these things started happening, and I saw the money coming in, and I thought to myself, this is really cool. I just think everybody needs to hear about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you kind of took my breath away. That was amazing. So what you talked about, the very first obstacle or the very first thing that you decide, there were 2 things you needed to do. You needed to find the money, and you needed to find a mentor. By the way, those were the first 2 things that I did also. Although I initially had my mentor was my dad, but I kind of had that in the can. I had to find the money, right?
Right.
But those were my first 2 things. I knew I needed those. What were the other obstacles that you faced getting started?
Well, a big one I've alluded to multiple times is how inept I was. I always thought you had to be able to do everything. And so it was kind of good to do a whole house once by myself, because I really thought, well, I knew for a fact I don't really want to do property management. I really, really, really don't want to fix the house up. I mean, I would have to work with contractors anyway, and they would know I don't know what I'm talking about, would probably rip me off 6 ways to Sunday, you know? So there's that. But I thought in the back of my head, surely I can find these houses because this was 2007. So there were foreclosures everywhere. And I was shocked and dumbfounded on how difficult it was to find a house. In fact, I kind of had to cheat after a while because I would go out on my lunch hour, my 1 hour break from the bank, and I would be driving for dollars, looking for houses. And these were houses that had clearly marked as foreclosures. So it wasn't like, I had to uncover any secrets or anything. I'd write down the name of the sign, call the real estate agent and say, hey, I just drove by this house. I want to buy it. And they would kind of ask me a few questions. And eventually they'd figure out I was an investor. So they knew I wasn't retail. That kind of turned a lot of them off. A couple of them would say, well, I've already sold that house to a buddy of mine who's an investor, so you can't have that one. And I'm like, why do you still have your sign up? And he said, looking for people like you, so add to my database. And I'm like, okay, well, that's wasting my time. And then a few times I'd get a real estate agent and they would say, well, look, that house you're trying to buy in the market it's in is worth $100,000, but it needs about $20,000 worth of work. So we'll sell it to you for 80. Well, doing my 6 classes, I knew that I should be able to buy that house for 60 and then put 20 in it. And then I can sell it for 100 if I wanted to flip it. And of course, the agent told me, you can't do that. And I'm like, yes, we can. And then I got hung up on. Mm-hmm. So I was like, man, this is hard.
It is.
I can't even find a house. You got to kiss a lot of frogs to find one that works. And so finally, the light bulb came in my dense little head. And I said, I'm going to call my mentor. I said, winter's coming and I really want a house. I've got the money lined up and this is really frustrating. You've been doing this for 14 years. I bet every day your phone rings and someone's offering you a house because they know you're a known commodity that can put cash on the barrelhead. Would you please do me a favor and help me get the first one? And I said, and oh, by the way, you would take me to other students that were doing the same thing I was. The first one was tearing wiring out of the wall, out of the drywall. And my eyes were like this big because that was like sweating, like I couldn't even find the wire in the drywall, number one, or pull it out. The second house we went to, someone was on the roof with a sledgehammer and was taking down a demoing of the chimney. And I looked at them thinking to myself, there's no way I want it to be this heavy of a lift on my first one. I was happy to break even just to say I did one. And so I told them, I've got a scale from 1 to 10 on how hard a house is. And my scale is the low end on a 1, it would be a vacuum cleaner and a paintbrush. And on the 10, it would be a sledgehammer and a bulldozer. So on my first house, please find me a 2. That's the highest I want to go. And I told them, I said, we can break even on it, but I don't want to do a heavy lift. The next day she calls me and says, Dave, we found your house that's a 2. And it was. So I'm like, okay, terrible at finding houses, terrible at fixing them up, terrible about managing them. So that pretty much left me with a money guy.
So there's some things I really want to highlight there that I think are really, really valuable, David. So ladies, hear me, stick with me for a minute here. There's a thing that I do that drives my husband crazy. And that is that I'm constantly asking. It's not, I'm asking questions like, how does this work and how does that work? I'm asking for an exception. What that looks like is we'll go to a cafe and we'll stand in a long line. We'll order our lunch and our coffees, but we forget something. And then we go and we sit down. Usually that something is something simple like, we forgot our waters, right? And usually the way that the cafe might work is that you have to stand in line again because it has to get in line. They've got their systems, right? And you don't want to interfere with the systems. I understand about systems and I want to be respectful. However, if there's a 20-minute line and I've got a 30-minute lunch and we've already waited in line, I don't want to do that. And so I'll go to the back or to the side and say, I'm so very sorry. I did not ask for our water while we were in line. Would you consider giving me some water? invariably the answer is yes. If you're at Starbucks, they'll always be like, you should stand in line, but we'll do it for you. So you get a little gruff, right? But I'm not afraid to ask. And there are times where, not for a cup of water, but for other things, they'll say, no, you need to stand in line like everybody else, right? And they'll just say no. But that philosophy of asking, in spite of the fact that you might get no, it is a superpower. And David just demonstrated this perfectly. He's got these teachers have lots of students, they're teaching a particular system, and he was like, no, that's not going to work for me. Let me ask some questions. Could you do this? And not only could you do this, but could you do it this way? Like, he went so much deeper. I want only a 2, right? Like, but I think that what happens is so many of us are just even afraid to ask. I'll have tenants come through my houses and they'll say, I don't have good credit. If I apply, are you going to say yes? And what I'll say to them is, I can't say yes unless you apply, right? Nobody can say yes to you unless you ask a question. And you'd be surprised how many people will if you do. Right. So what I really love is how David's like, no, this is not really going to work. This what will work. I've got mentors. Let me ask the question. So many of us have been too shy to do that. To give another example, just kind of in daily life, the other day we stood in line. I forgot to order a coffee. These people at this cafe know me a lot. And this is the other thing. They know me. They know that I will ask. They still love me. So this is the other thing. You're afraid if I ask the questions, they're not going to like me anymore. They'll think that I'm imposing, whatever. It feels bad, right? Or they're going to judge me, whatever. No, they love me there, right? So I go up and I'm like, I don't want to stand in line again. I forgot my husband's coffee. Would you mind giving it to me now and he'll pay later? Of course. Right. But it's just asking the question. So these are these menial things that I'm talking about in my daily life. David did that on a bigger scale with his mentors and with his real estate. And so I want you to see and start practicing this, ladies. Start practicing asking for what you want. Do it kindly, gently, respectfully. But in everything that you do, if you start building that asking for what I need muscle, when it gets to a point like you are with David, where he needed to make this business work, right? He knew he was behind the 8 ball, right? But he wasn't afraid to ask the questions. And so you can build the asking the question muscle in your life to then, when you find a mentor, you find a situation where you need to ask a question, you're willing to ask it. I've been asking financing questions like crazy right now because I'm trying to hold on to a piece of property that I would rather not sell. I'm getting no all over the place. I'm still asking because I'm not afraid to ask. I know there's a way to do this. And if there's not, it's not going to be a nightmare. I'll just sell the property. I would just rather not. But I keep asking questions. And even though my loan is difficult, even though the situation and the property is difficult, I never get I won't look into this. I get a, sure, Moneeka, let's take a look, because I ask respectfully and people like working with me. And enough of the times they benefit from my ask, right? In this particular case, your team, your mentors, they benefited from your ask, right, David?
Correct.
And the cafe benefits from my ask because I keep coming back and I bring everybody with me. They get a ton of business out of me, right? Mm-hmm. So let them benefit from your ask, but don't be afraid to ask. And David, your story is just so perfect for that lesson. I hope it's okay that I took the time to share that. Do you agree with me,
Absolutely. Though? Oh, yes, definitely. I think that's what holds a lot of people back, because they're just so timid and thinking that, well, if that was an option, they would have told me. But believe me, right, everyone's really busy doing what they're doing, and they're so focused on what they're doing, they don't have time to stop and consider that there's another way sometimes. And I have 4 sons, and 3 of them would just take whatever I said as, that's what Dad said, I'm not going to move. But my 3rd son would always negotiate. Mm-hmm. And the other boys would look at him like, well, that's not fair. And I'm like, sure, it's fair. You have the same opportunity as he did. He just took it.
That's right. That's right. And actually, it's true for me and my sisters too. I will ask, and The youngest one will just go with whatever they told. If they said, like you said, right? If
Mm-hmm.
there was a different option, they would have told me the other option. The problem is there's 100 options.
Exactly.
They're not going to go through all of those. You think of the option that you're interested in and ask if it's available, right?
Well, yeah, because essentially it's like if you threw an option that I didn't like, I would say no to that too. But occasionally he would come up with something that I was like, I didn't really think about that. Let me think about that. And he would get something that he was wanting. And anybody can do this, but
Right.
having it done to you versus you being the person asking is a different strategy.
Right. Right. I love that. Okay. So talk to me about investing in 2022. Can we still do this and still make passive income?
Yes, you can, but you always have to keep your eye on the numbers. So there was a recent article in your Apple News feed that said the 4 markets in the country that still have affordable housing based on the population. Well, here's the 4 houses. I'll tell you, so you don't read the article. 4 cities. So Detroit, Michigan, Memphis, Tennessee, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, shockingly, but 2 in Oklahoma. So there's always markets that have affordable housing based on the numbers. Like this is the average person's income. This is the average rent. Do the math, it's affordable. And then you just have to reverse engineer and say, can I make this work by buying a house for X, adding this to the renovations? This is my maximum number. Run the numbers on the debt and say, yep, it cash flows $200 a month. I can do stuff all day long until those numbers change. When the numbers change, which they do eventually, then you find another market that's affordable.
Okay. So don't get married to a market. That's another thing too, right? So
Yes, I started in Nashville, and the numbers do not work in Nashville at all.
right. And you
But
started in Nashville because you live in Nashville. Is that true?
and because the numbers worked,
Okay.
if the numbers didn't work, I would have probably been, well, the numbers don't work and give up. So luckily, sometimes I didn't even know the questions to ask until I had the experience to know what to ask.
Mhm.
But when I first got started, even though we bought our first house for $70,000, that was a house that literally nobody wanted. So that makes you nervous saying, well, if other experienced people don't want this house, should I be buying it as a rookie, right?
Mhm.
But the numbers worked. So when the numbers work, you just have to say, if there's a renter out there that'll pay what the market rent is, and I can run this at this cost, then the numbers work when I put a loan on it, where I'm going to make $200 a month. No, you're not going to retire with that, but that first house will get you started on the path to retirement.
Right. Got it. What is it that you know now that you wish you knew when you started?
I think the mindset issues keep people from doing uh, things that they want to try. The fear of failure, the fear that this won't work for me, the fear of being scammed. Everybody has those same fears. And then no matter who you talk to, relatives, friends, hey, I'm thinking about doing X. There's always somebody that can pull a bad story out and say, oh, don't do that because I knew a person and they did it once and they're living in a van down by the river now. So having been through banking and doing commercial loans, I've seen people in every type of business succeed, but I've also seen people try to do the same type of business and fail. So it typically is not the system, it's whether you're cut out to work into that system. So if you can be in a business, a lot of people, I was a small business administration loan officer. So I'd get every single person that hated their job, that woke up on Monday and said, I'm going to go see the bank and tell them about my dream. And I want them to give me a loan for it. And I would try to talk people out of it and say, look, your business it's kind of half-baked idea. A lot of people would say, I want to start a restaurant. And my first question was, have you ever worked in a restaurant before? I mean, you are literally cooking and cleaning all day long. It's hard work. And I would rather go try it before I bought into it and put my house up on a mortgage to make sure it was something I really wanted to do. So these mindset issues, they're real to us individually, but if things are done correctly, and if people that have been there before you can show you, instead of going down that path, which has a cliff that you got to climb, walk over here and there's steps, makes a huge difference.
I love that. And I'm all about the mindset piece. So for me, that's right up my alley too. I think that the biggest asset that we have is a real estate between our ears.
Mm-hmm.
And if we grow that into a really, really valuable, good asset that supports our life, everything else is so much easier. You know what I mean?
Most definitely. I mean, I told you in the beginning that I avoided real estate because of all the things I knew I couldn't do or wouldn't do. But I kept coming back to the one thing that probably motivated me more than anything else is this is working for people, and a lot of people. Housing is such a basic need. Everybody is spending money on housing. So it's not like you've got to introduce this new concept of, hey, come out of the woods. Now let's live in this nice heated and cooled box. That's nothing you have to do to convince people they need housing. Zero. You just have to provide affordable, comfortable, safe housing. And if you do that, there are plenty of people that will pay for you to live there.
Yeah, I love that. This conversation has been amazing. Thank you, David.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I want to let you ladies know we do have more coming up for extra. David's going to share with us the 4 F's for success in real estate. He's got kind of a little system that he wants to share with us. So stay tuned for that. David, can you tell everybody how they can reach you? And I know you've got a special gift for everyone.
Correct. So there's 2 basic ways to reach me. And it's not by Instagram because I take no pictures, and it's not through Facebook because I only post once a year my obligatory, here's my family and what they look like on the beach. So that's the only posts I do in those 2. But one that I am active in and one that I'm targeting the book towards are basically W-2 employees, self-employed people. And most of those people professionally would be on the LinkedIn website. Mm-hmm. So if they can connect with me through LinkedIn, my name is David Vernich with a V as in Victor. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. And as far as I know, I'm the only David Vernich in America. So I should not be that hard to find.
Awesome.
And the second way is I do have a website called moneyscoreboard.com. It doesn't make sense unless you read the book, but there is actually a little money scoreboard that can be filled out to show you how far away you are from being able to retire.
Interesting. Awesome. And then tell us about the book.
So the name of the book is Middle Class to Millionaire, Making the Leap to the Next Level. And essentially, it is trying to get the knowledge that I've obtained over the last 15 years out into the general public. For anybody that likes Seinfeld, I call it the Festivus for the rest of us, because most real estate podcasts tend to focus on do it all yourself, A to Z, be the superwoman, Superman, go find them, go lift bales of hay, go chop trees down, do all this stuff. And then the rest of us who are W-2 employees, like, I don't want to do that in my free time. And so there's way more of us than there are of them out there, the superstars. So just the normal middle-class people, if we can just kind of band together and do things like a teamwork and each take a small piece of the deal, but essentially band together, then not only do we minimize our downside risk, but we greatly increase the probability of success. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get across in the book, that this can be real estate investing can be, when added to your retirement account, something that will supercharge the amount of money that you will actually be able to receive, not only in retirement, but way before retirement. Because I don't want to wait till I'm old and crippled to start pulling money in retirement. I want to enjoy life now when I'm still young. So this is a way to do it.
Nice. And so the book is called Middle Class to Millionaire. David has very generously offered for my community to give you a digital copy for free, so you can kind of get to know the way that he works and the way that he's done this. So if you want to do that, go to blissfulinvestor.com/middle class, because you may be middle class now, but you can become a millionaire too. So blissfulinvestor.com/middle class. That'll get you a free digital copy of the book. And David, could you tell me, you in the green room, you shared with me one of your goals. Could you share with that with my audience so they kind of know where you're coming from?
Yes. So I never looked to be a best-selling author and just wanted to get this information out there. But I was pushed by several groups and friends to come up with a hard and fast goal on what I wanted to accomplish by releasing this information. Essentially, I feel like I can help a lot of people to fill the hole for the retirement income, because that's a big crisis coming down the pike for people that are getting up in age like myself, as well as the affordable housing crisis. So this kind of fixes two major problems for a lot of people. However, I'm only one person. I don't have a big staff of people. So I know that in order for me to help as many people as I can, I've got to limit what I can do. So I feel like I can help 100 individual investors obtain at least 10 houses, and we do that in a partnership program. So I'm holding their hand along the way. They have to qualify. They've got to bring value to the process, but I help them see the value they bring. And frankly, some people won't have the necessary ingredients to do it, but most people would be surprised that they're already ready to make this next step.
Got it. Okay. So he's looking for partners that he can help to build their wealth together as partners. So that I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, David.
Sure. Glad to help.
All righty. Cool. Are you ready for our 3 rapid fire questions?
Hit me. Let's go.
Okay. Give us one super tip on getting started investing in real estate.
Well, I think they're already doing it by listening to this podcast. So to me, a lot of podcasts out there that can teach you, and you've got a great one, Moneeka. So I think talking to somebody like yourself it's a free and easy way to do it on your schedule, your time, and to hear stories, real life stories, not fake stories, not scams, but real life people that are actually doing it every day. That to me gives you the belief system that this can be something that you too can do, which will take you to the next level.
I love that. Thank you. And then what is one strategy on being successful as a real estate investor?
Well, you alluded to it earlier, and that is asking questions. I think a lot of people, they kind of keep everything to themselves. They might read something, they might hear something, but then they don't say anything. And so you'd be amazed if your radar is on and you're in any kind of social engagement whatsoever, how often you can probably insert something having to do with finances, retirement, real estate investing. It's just, but if you got to be listening for the clues. I have yet to come across when I'm in a group setting and somebody has not said something that triggered, I can talk to them about real estate investing.
Right. And ask, it's a lot of what you're saying, I think, is asking it in your own mind, right? Like,
Correct.
does that make sense? And when you're really listening, that's how you know if you're asking those questions, right?
Well, plus, I think a lot of people in the back of their minds are trying to figure it out too.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can be somebody that can provide one piece of the puzzle that they were looking for by just offering something that you learned from a podcast or from a book, I mean, that opens the door to some great conversations and maybe even some partnerships.
Yeah, great. And then what is one thing that you do, David, every day that contributes to your personal success?
Well, I practice, I eat my own cooking. So essentially my goal is, as I continue to grow my portfolio of real estate, I'm always looking for my next purchase. So for example, today, I try to do one thing every day that moves the needle in real estate. And today, believe it or not, was the day I started this. So my last partner and I, who actually have known since I was 9 years old, okay, we met that's how long we were. We had lunch together and we're 50-50 partners, and we each bought as 50-50 partners 2 houses on the same street in Little Rock, Arkansas. Mm-hmm. And we used cash to buy them, which was our own cash, but we didn't want to keep it tied up in there. So we had to go to another bank today, finally had the loan closing to pull out, 80% of the cash that we had invested in those houses. So here we are at the restaurant, and we have a check for $134,172.40, which was the refinance from one. and a check for $115,229.40. I just wrote those down. And I said to him, would you have ever believed when you first met me and we were 9 years old that we'd be sitting at a restaurant at this age swapping six-figure checks? And he just kind of said no. And then he got in his brand new convertible Corvette, $110,000 car, and drove off. So it's like, well, he looks way more successful than I am, because I drove away in my Toyota CHR with 200,000 miles on it. However, I was so happy for him because a lot of the money that he's made was because of our partnership.
I love that. I love that. And you know what? Success looks different to everybody.
You're right.
So yeah. What were you going to say?
Well, he asked me if I wanted to get in the driver's seat, and I said, I don't think I could get back out. It's so low to the ground. So no thanks.
So that doesn't look like success to you.
Yes. Trying to crawl out of a car on the parking lot would be very embarrassing. So I'm like, I know how far my knees can go. So I'm good. I'll just stand and look at you. I'll admire your car from standing position.
Right. I love that. That's a funny story. David, this has been a great show. Thank you for all you've shared.
My pleasure. I really do appreciate you having me on here. And I hope that this helps your audience kind of knock some of those limiting beliefs that they might have in their own mind that they can't do this, because I know they can.
I know they can too. And your book will help. So
Yes.
Ladies, remember to go to blissfulinvestor.com/middle class. Get that book. And stay tuned. We've got more in extra. We're going to be talking about the 4 F's for success in real estate, according to David Vernich. So stay tuned for that if you're already a subscriber. And if you're not, please just go to realestateinvestingforwomenextra.com and you can subscribe there. If you're leaving David and I now, thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to seeing you next time. And until then, remember, goals without action are just dreams. So get out there, take action, and create the life your heart deeply desires. I'll see you soon. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you'd like to find out more about how to become a blissful millionaire, go to blissfulinvestor.com. See you next time.